We are very excited today. We've got a wonderful conversation today with somebody who was at the very center of the double homicide trial of Alec Murdaugh down in the low country of South Carolina back in March of this year. This trial made international headlines, focus of international attention, and handling it all with amazing grace. The clerk of court from Colleton County, Miss Becky Hill. Becky, thank you for being with us today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Now, I've got to ask you this, Madam Clerk. Can we dispense with the formalities, and can I call you Miss Becky?
Can we please do that? Thank you, Will. Thank you.
Excellent. Because during the 6 weeks of that trial, you were Miss Becky, running that show, and again, just the integrity, the way you ran that trial from start to finish, you and your crew. I'm sure you're still getting plaudits, but it was just amazing.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Let me ask you: have things gotten back to normal in the borough since this trial?
I don't think we really know what normal is. They say it's just a setting on the dryer. I'm beginning to believe that's about true.
Well, how's everybody doing? I mean, your family's well. Your beautiful daughter Aubrey. Everybody's doing well.
We are all doing well. My daughter is doing great. She's singing. She's gotten a lot of gigs and she's got a little group together and they sang at the Water Festival in Beaufort here recently and doing great. My
That is
husband,
awesome.
Tommy, is doing wonderful. Trying to be retired, but I keep him busy. And my son and his wife and two children doing great.
That's wonderful. And the town, we had such a wonderful experience in Walterboro. Not just you, your staff, the sheriffs, but all the businesses there, the food trucks. Everybody's so welcoming. What a great community.
Thank you. I'm glad that you had that experience because that's what we wanted to provide.
Well, it was a difficult situation, but you guys absolutely did your jobs and put the best foot forward, as you said you would do before the trial. But Becky, I want to ask you: a lot of folks are writing books about the Murdaugh saga and about various aspects of it, but your book, which is coming out, tell me when it's coming out again, so I'll make sure I know that date.
August 1st is our due date. It's already
So
out on
right around the
Amazon.
corner.
Yes.
Oh
Yes,
wow!
it is on
Well,
Amazon.
I was lucky enough to get a sneak peek of it, and I gotta ask you first two questions really. When did the idea come to you to write this, and how did you get it done so quickly?
Thinking back, I think the idea came from a historical point of view because we knew that this was such a trial that would be different from anything that we had ever experienced, and it would be on a worldwide stage. I think the seed was planted back before the trial. And did I really think that I would write a book? I think the thinking was there, but then I happened to meet some people that kind of put feet to the dream, so to speak. And that was at the very end of the trial when I met these people. And it took us 4.5 months to write this book, which is a very, very, very fast way to write a book. Some people take 4.5 years, I've been told. But I worked.
I would take 4.5 decades and maybe never get it done.
I have certainly enjoyed writing and writing my first book. I've always loved reading, writing, and from the time that I was a child. So I would pretend when I was a child that I was a newscaster of all things. And I'd put the newspaper in front of me and pretend I was on Channel 5 with Charlie Hall. But you have to be from the low country to know about Charlie Hall. He was an icon.
Let me ask you this question. One of the things that struck me in reading your book was the insight you had into that jury. It was almost like you knew from the very beginning what they were thinking. And remember, a lot of folks don't know this, but Alec Murdaugh picked that jury himself, didn't he?
Did. He did. Defendants sometimes get the chance to do that. Sometimes they exercise their right to do that. And Alec Murdaugh certainly did use his right to pick his own jury. My daughter almost was on the jury as well.
Oh, wow. That would have been some insight.
That would have been a totally different story.
You wrote in your book, though, about sometimes juries come together, sometimes they don't. But you wrote that this jury was almost like a family. I mean, they were so close. Tell us a little bit about how those relationships developed and how they evolved over the course of the trial?
They bonded immediately from the time that they met back in the room, and they were all picked together on Tuesday of January. And they were prayerful. I believe I say this in my book. They were very perceptive, and they were just a pack. They stayed together. They treated each other like family. I could tell just from talking to the jurors about daily things, nothing about the trial at all. But I've been around a jury for a long time, different juries for a long time, and you get to know the layout of a jury, and just you can get a feel from how juries are going to be. And I learned that this jury, they were tight. They started every morning out with prayer. They were very watchful. They were very perceptive in the things that they were listening to, the things they were watching during the trial, especially when we went to Moselle at the very end of the trial. That was very telling. And just by observation, I knew that the verdict was already pretty sealed when we went to Moselle. There wasn't going to take much, and I knew it wasn't going to take long for them to come to a decision about a verdict.
Well, let me ask you about that field trip. That's one of the most baffling parts of this trial. It was requested by the defense attorneys. They felt that it would show logistically that Alec Murdaugh couldn't have committed the crimes of which he was convicted. But you said in the book that that was what sealed his fate, that it
Yeah,
actually worked against Murdaugh. Tell us about that,
it
Becky.
did. The defense attorneys thought that it was going to be used in their favor. Um, that's why I think they requested it, and Judge Newman granted it. So when we were out there on the property and walking side by side, there was hardly any conversation, no talking at all. And everyone was doing their own measurements in their own way. They were walking things out, I think going over in their mind what they had heard throughout the trial and putting it all together. It was very heavy out there that day, seeing all the jurors contemplating and in thought of what they were looking at and seeing with their own eyes. I don't think that the defense attorneys thought it would go that way.
Well, and by that time in the trial, obviously, they were subject matter experts, not only on the Murdaughs, not only on all the ancillary crimes of which Alec Murdaugh stood accused, but of that crime scene. I mean, they had heard by that point weeks of testimony about what transpired on the ground they were walking. And Becky, you said they were silent, they were stoic. As you watched them at Moselle, and you said that Alec Murdaugh's fate was sealed. What was it that you saw in their faces that led you to that conclusion?
They were extremely
Um,
serious. They knew that the decisions they were making was going to be life changing for this person named Alec Murdaugh. They were serious about what they were doing because they knew that the verdict was going to be a heavy one to hand out. I feel like, but in their faces, it was almost as if they knew that they were going to have to come down with a verdict of guilty, because to them, the evidence was there.
it was obviously a circumstantial case, but an overwhelming amount of circumstantial evidence pointing to the guilt of Alec Murdaugh. Becky, let's talk about the verdict in that moment. I remember being in the courtroom that night, seeing you walk by with a look on your face like it was about to happen, but you knew you were one of the few people. We kept hearing from all these national observers that it would be weeks, that it would take forever for this jury to reach a verdict, and that they may not, in fact, reach a verdict. But you, from the beginning, had a sense of what was really going to happen. Were you surprised at how fast it was?
I was not surprised. It's called that sense, or a woman's gut. It's called that sixth sense that you may have. Um, I was very in tune with, from watching the jury. That's something that TV watchers did not have the ability to see. But those of us that were in the courtroom we could watch the jury, we could watch their body language, we could see their faces and what expressions they had, and from hearing the different witnesses that were on the stand, we could tell that, how in tune they were with each witness. And I just felt like, even though it was a lot of circumstantial evidence, they were able to put it all together and come up with the verdict that they got, and they got it right.
Well, let me ask you about that moment. Probably one of the most watched, most anticipated, uh, probably for you, very stressful moments. But the moment when you read that verdict, I remember being in the courtroom. I was thinking to myself, how is she doing this? I mean, you'd been working yourself and your staff, no sleep for weeks, and here you are at this just incredibly important moment, the apex of this case, reading out the verdict. Becky, what was that moment like for you?
It was epic. I have worked with Alec Murdaugh and some of the other Murdaugh men in the courtroom before, and I knew them on the other side of justice. I had been with them when we were all together on the side of right. And now here I was having to give the verdict of a lifetime and to read it out for Alec. Um, it was heartbreaking. It was something that I never thought I'd have to say out loud. It was very heavy.
A lot of heaviness in this case. And one of the other things I noted in your book, Becky, the way that you talked about the Murdaugh family and the really the compassion that comes through those pages for some of the members of his family who were there in the courtroom every day, and you could really feel, that relationship that you've had with them over the years and how hard that must have been. Becky, what do you think in the aftermath of this case? There was so much at stake here, really, for justice in South Carolina, for the victims in this case. But as you look at the outcome of this, the aftermath of this trial, what has stood out to you as being significant or making an impact on you and as you continue to do your job for the justice system down there in the South Carolina Low Country?
Well, I believe that justice was done, and I believe that the jury showed that it's not all about who you are, and it's the crime. If you commit the crime, you're going to be found out, and that justice will be served. I thought it was very, very telling that doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It sounds to me like the days of old are gone, as far as things that happen. Right is right and wrong is wrong, and it was time to pay.
It was indeed. And Becky, I got to say, the folks down there in Colleton, the jury pool that you winnowed through over that period at the beginning of the trial, all the folks there that helped oversee that trial, you guys were the ones that delivered that justice. And it was an amazing thing to watch. There's a lot of books coming out on this. Obviously, we've been seeing tweets and web pages with all this, but Becky, yours is the only one that really has this front row seat, this inside the minds really of those jurors, and as this was happening. So just an incredibly unique perspective behind the walls of justice, the doors of justice. I'm sorry, behind the doors of justice.
Right, right.
Is it's available on Amazon, and we're going to put the page up here where you can access it. Tell us about your co-author on this real quick, Becky. You've been
Sure.
working with somebody.
Sure. Neil Gordon is the co-author, and his wife, Melissa Gordon, is the photographer who took so many pictures even before I had met her. And you can go to www.augustabusinessdaily.com, and it's very easy access to the website for Amazon, because our book is now on Amazon. Neil is a fellow journalist and former newscaster, and he has been such a treasure in helping me co-write this book.
That is awesome. Behind the Doors of Justice by Becky Hill. and Neil Gordon. Becky, thank you so much for joining us. We got to get back down there to the borough soon. I've been missing that food. I'm not going to lie.
Please come. We have two new coffee shops now here in the downtown area. Both are fabulous. Come and get you some, and we'd love to have you back soon.
Well, it became a second home for us during those 6 weeks. And again, that's also a credit to you and to that amazing community down there.
Thank you
Becky
so
Hill,
much.
Miss Becky, thank you for joining us. We'll be down there to see you again soon.
I hope so. Look forward to it.